Hello, fellow Silversaints. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's video, which I'm really excited for, I'm going to be talking to you about my top 10 books that I would like to read one day before I leave this earthly plane, before I am unalived at some point in the future. Now, I cannot take credit for this at all. I recently watched a wonderful video, which was a live discussion between the wonderful Johanna reads, amazing booktuber. I love her to pieces. And also another booktuber that I had not yet encountered, which is the lovely Thomas R. Howell. Johanna and Thomas had such an incredible discussion about things that they are currently loving in fiction. And I really enjoyed that video. They both had such incredible insights. So I immediately went and subscribed to Thomas's channel, and I came across one of his videos, which was his top 10 books that he would like to read before he leaves this earthly plane. And his list was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. And then only a couple of days ago, the lovely David from Four Corners of a Page, absolutely adore him, he did his video, which was also inspired by Thomas R. Howell. So Thomas, if you are watching this, or if you happen to see that we're doing this, it's all because of you. So I'm going to have a go at doing it myself as well. But please do go and watch their videos. I will put their videos in the description box below. So today I'm going to be talking you through the top 10 books that I would like to read before I leave the earthly plane. Now, number one is actually quite heavily inspired by Thomas R. Howell, because he has just been expressing on his booktube channel about how he has just finished this absolute masterpiece. Now, I had heard about it from quite a few other booktubers, but actually two of them are David, Four Corners of the Page, and Johanna themselves. And this is, and also I know that it's spoken about a lot by Richard from To Ramble. I think it's one of his favourite books of all time. And this is the incredible Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Now, I have not read much about it. I've only heard the discussions from the incredible booktubers that I watch, but I have just got a very brief summary from Goodreads just to read you. I know that this is a Western, and I know that it is quite lengthy, and so a lot of people are often put off it. But I am told that this has the most wonderful look at some really complex characters. It's very much a dive into just their everyday lives and their actions, and the things that we may think as a reader are just quite things that sometimes you may think are a nothing part of someone's life. Just these small little interactions and moments that actually build so much. Those little things. If you think about why we love Robin Hobb, it's about those little tiny interactions, those little moments. Apparently, that's what this is very good at. So I'll just read you the summary. Journey to the dusty little Texas town of Lonesome Dove and meet an unforgettable assortment of heroes and outlaws, whores and ladies, Indians and settlers. Richly authentic, beautifully written, always dramatic, Lonesome Dove is a book to make us laugh, weep, dream, and remember. So it's a Western and it's historical fiction, and I've just heard the most wonderful things about this. And I've not really I don't think I've read any Westerns at all. So this would be my first, but I've just heard the most wonderful things about this book. And it's a character-driven novel, and I have found that I am definitely a character-driven reader. I didn't used to be, but I very much am now. And I would love to experience that in some other genres. And, primarily I read fantasy, and I'm now delving more into sci-fi. But I think that a Western it'd be good for me to try some new genres, and it would be lovely to read this classic. So I think it's a bit of a modern classic, but I've been also talking about how I'd love to read more books sort of written a little bit of a while ago. This isn't that old. It's like the 80s, I believe, but still it's older than a lot of the fiction I currently read, and I would love to give it a go. So Lonesome Dove is on my list. Number 2. Now this one is actually coming up very soon, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I am actually planning on doing a buddy read of this. Abby, Books and Three Cats, and I are very good at planning in our classic buddy reads, and we are actually planning on buddy reading this throughout the course of April. It may even go a little bit further because it's such a big book, but this has been spoken about so many times. I've seen so many incredible bookstagrams talk about this book. Also, Ed from the Brothers Gwyn is a very big fan of this book, and it's one that I definitely want to read. Thrown in prison for a crime he has not committed, Edmond Dante is confined to the grim fortress of If. There he learns of a great hoard of treasure hidden on the Isle of Monte Cristo and becomes determined not only to escape, but to unearth the treasure and use it to plot the destruction of the 3 men responsible for his incarceration. A huge popular success when it was first serialized in the 1840s, Dumas was inspired by a real-life case of wrongful imprisonment when writing his epic tale of suffering and retribution. I know that it's a big book and it may be very intimidating, and I think for a lot of these books, that's part of the reason I haven't got to them yet. But I feel like I'm at a point with my classics reading where doing it with Abby, I feel like I've got my little hand being held, we're going into it together. And I think for me, approaching classics by reading them with a friend, with Abby, has been so much better for me. It makes them a little bit more enjoyable to chat about them and to notice little differences, little things that maybe she noticed that I didn't pick up on. Maybe there's something I noticed that she didn't. And I just love doing that. So I think that we will get a really good experience out of this, and I can't wait. So that's The Count of Monte Cristo. I don't think I would ever be able to call myself a sci-fi reader unless I have read this, and that is Dune by Frank Herbert. I have not read Dune, and I have not seen the films either. This is probably what J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and Stories from Middle-earth is to fantasy. Dune is to sci-fi. I think Dune is probably the shoulders that a lot of modern sci-fi stands on. This is a book that is referred to so many times by incredible booktubers and bookstagrammers as just being simply incredible. And I know my gorgeous friend Leanne, this is her favourite book, and I think she has so many editions. She just adores it. And I would like to read it, more so for her than anything, so that I can talk to her about it. But again, I will read the summary for anybody that doesn't know, although I'm sure you all do. Set on the desert planet Arrakis, Dune is the story of the bull Paul Atreides, heir to a noble family tasked with ruling an inhospitable world where the only thing of value is the spice melange, a drug capable of extending life and enhancing consciousness. Coveted across the known universe, melange is a prize worth killing for. When House Atreides is betrayed, the destruction of Paul's family will set the boy on a journey toward a destiny greater than he could ever have imagined, and as he evolves into the mysterious man known as Muad'Dib, he will bring to fruition humankind's most ancient and unattainable dream. There it is. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to it at some point. I'm not sure when, but it is on my list of books to read before I leave the earthly plane. Number 4. Now, I'm going to put these both into one category because I'm a cheat, but also because they have the same author. And it's 2 more classics. This is Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Now, I'd started Pride and Prejudice quite a few years ago when I was a lot younger, because I very distinctly remember the first line. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I started reading Pride and Prejudice a long time ago, but I was far too young to appreciate it. And as I say, similarly with The Count of Monte Cristo, I think that now I've got a bit more experience in reading classics, that I would be able to have a much better time with it. I would find it a lot more accessible, and I would have Abby to chat to about it. I want to read both of these books. Pride and Prejudice, I have a gorgeous annotated edition that the lovely Abby sent to me. I have seen the films and the series, so I know the story quite well. So I think that might be the one I start with. But I also really want to read Sense and Sensibility. I know that the sisters Chris and Mads on BookTube talk about this book a lot and how incredible it is. And I think one thing that it's really well loved for is the fact that it's not only a romance, but also talks about love in many forms, and also the form of sisterhood. Now, I'm an only child. I don't have a sister, but I consider a lot of my bookish female friends my sisters. And I think that it would be lovely to experience a relationship like that through this book, a book that portrays sisterhood and what it means to have a sister, and that kind of love as something that I don't have. I think it'll be really interesting for me to read that. So these are 2 books that I would absolutely love to read. And I feel like they're classics for a reason, they're classics for a reason. The 6th book that is on my list is one that, again, I can't believe I haven't read, and that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This, I know, has been developed into a very, very a popular TV adaptation as well, and I've not seen that either. So I'm going into this completely blind. I believe that this is a dystopian novel, and I believe it's also classed as like a classic now, if not a classic, a modern classic. But I also know that it's very much sort of used in these sort of terms of feminist books. Set in the near future, it describes life in what was once the United States and is now called the Republic of Gilead, a monotheocracy that has reacted to social unrest and a sharply declining birth rate by reverting to and going beyond the repressive intolerance of the original Puritans. The regime takes the Book of Genesis absolutely at its word, with bizarre consequences for the women and men in its population. The story is told through the eyes of Offred, one of the unfortunate handmaids under the new social order. In condensed but eloquent prose, by turns cool-eyed, tender, despairing, passionate and wry, she reveals to us the dark corners behind the establishment's calm facade, as certain tendencies now in existence are carried to their logical conclusions. I am deeply curious about this book, and I have a feeling that it's going to leave me feeling empty inside, but also incredibly angry. I think that this is a very important read. There was recently a bit of news regarding sort of women and motherhood that made me very angry and a lot of other women very, very angry. And I feel like a book like this is never going to lose its importance. And I think it's something that I definitely need to experience. So it is on my list. Another book or series that is on my list is The Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. Le Guin is an author that, again, I've heard so much about from the wonderful Johanna reads. And I believe that this might be a good place for me to start. Please do let me know in the comments if I'm wrong and there is a better place for me to start. I'm just going to read a little summary. So it follows the life of Ged, a powerful wizard from his youth to old age, focusing on themes of balance, coming of age and responsibility. The story traverses a vast archipelago, exploring the dangers of pride, the nature of evil and the necessity of death. A very theme heavy. Le Guin, as I say, is an author that I've heard so much about. I believe Joanne has also spoken about The Dispossessed, which I believe is one of Le Guin's works, which I almost picked up the other day, but just didn't quite do it. But this is something that in terms of, I say I'm a very character-driven reader, which I am, but also I'm more so becoming a more theme-driven reader. And I feel like this series would be very good for that. And Le Guin has been somebody that has been recently added to my list, but is moving up my list a lot. So I'm very, very keen to get to some of Le Guin's books. The next book on my list is actually a non-fiction, and this is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge and the Teachings of Plants. This has been heavily spoken about and recommended by a wonderful YouTuber called Lena Norms, who makes incredible videos about books as well as many other topics, but also is very supporting of the environment, which as we all should be. And she spoke about this book quite a few times, and I have added it to my list and just haven't got to it yet, but I would love to read it. So I'm just going to read a summary for you. As a botanist, Robin Wall Kimmerer has been trained to ask questions of nature with the tools of science, and as a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, she embraces the notion that plants and animals are our oldest teachers. In Braiding Sweetgrass, she brings these lenses of knowledge together to show that the awakening of a wider ecological consciousness requires the acknowledgement and celebration of our reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world. For only when we hear the languages of other beings are we capable of understanding the generosity of the earth and learning to give our own gifts in return. It's something that I'm a very big believer in this. I believe Mother Nature is all powerful and does her thing, but I believe that we are very much as a nation losing our connection with nature and with the world and with our environment, and becoming so disconnected, and we think that our way of doing things is going to work. And actually, I think rooting back in nature and regaining that connection in nature with plants and animals around us is really important to moving forward and to finding balance and restoring that balance. But also something that I've learned a lot about recently is how we have sort of lost a lot of connections with Indigenous populations and how they are being ignored and not listened to. But actually their knowledge is so profound and important. And so I think this book will be really, really great for me to engage with more of that information and learn more about it. So that is very, very much high on my list. Quite relevant at the moment because we recently sadly lost the author. He recently passed away. This is Hyperion by the incredible Dan Simmons. Again, this is a book I know very, very, very little about, apart from it's incredibly strong in the sci-fi genre. Again, I know my gorgeous friend Leanne absolutely adores this book as well. This is one that I've been desperate to get to, but just it keeps sort of, it's always been on my list, but I've just never got to it. On the world called Hyperion, beyond the law of the hegemony of man, there waits a creature called the Shrike. There are those who worship it, there are those who fear it, and there are those who have vowed to destroy it. In the Valley of the Time Tombs, where huge brooding structures move backward through time, the Shrike waits for them all. On the eve of Armageddon, with the entire galaxy at war, 7 pilgrims set forth on a final voyage to Hyperion, seeking the answers to the unsolved riddles of their lives. Each carries a desperate hope and a terrible secret, and one may hold the fate of humanity in its hands. I mean, that just sounds amazing. It sounds like it's blending a lot of genres there, not just science, sci-fi, but fantasy as well. It sounds absolutely fantastic. I've heard so many people talk about how this has been a bit of one of those life-changing reads. And again, Richard from Tutor Ramble speaks about this book a lot. And I know that Dan Simmons has written a lot, but I believe Hyperion is probably his most well-loved and spoken about book. And I'm desperate to give it a go. And I love the original cover. I'm going to put a picture of it on the screen because it's so beautiful. If I could get a copy like that, I'd be so happy. My goodness, it's absolutely gorgeous. And again, another classic, and one that is slightly older. You know, not old. It was published in the late 80s, but again, it's a different time to what I'm used to reading, and I'm loving that at the moment. Okay, I only have 2 books left. Actually, one is a series. So this is the next one on my list is technically a trilogy, but I'm going to talk about book 1 predominantly, but the trilogy is called the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and this starts with the book called The Fifth Season. Now, I've heard Chris and Mads talk about this a lot, one specifically Mads, because it's one of hers that she recommends, but she recommends it to intermediate readers, not someone who is new to reading this kind of book. I believe this is a fantasy dystopia book. Something that I've heard about this series is that it's one that it can be a little bit tricky to follow at points, but that the payoff is just incredible. This is the way the world ends again. 3 terrible things happen in a single day. Essen, a woman living an ordinary life in a small town, comes home to find her husband has brutally murdered their son and kidnapped their daughter. Meanwhile, while Sansa, the world-spanning empire whose innovations have been civilization's bedrock for 1,000 years, collapses as most of its citizens are murdered to serve a madman's vengeance. And worst of all, across the heart of the vast continent known as the Stillness, a great red rift has been torn in the heart of the earth, spewing ash enough to darken the sky for years or centuries. Now Essen must pursue the wreckage of her family through a deadly dying land. Without sunlight, clean water, or arable land, and with limited stockpiles of supplies, there will be war all across the Stillness, a battle royale of nations not for power or territory, but simply for the basic resources necessary to get through the long, dark night. Essen does not care if the world falls apart around her. She'll break it herself if she must and save her daughter. Something that really intrigues me about this is it's sci-fi and it's fantasy and it's dystopian, but it's something that seems to be a very prevalent theme apart from family and protection and what you will do to protect those around you. Seems like morality is going to come into this a lot, but it also seems that the author is playing around with the theme or diving into the theme of looking into the environment and what happens when resources are so scarce because of huge environmental problems. And obviously, living in a world that we do, these kinds of things don't seem that far-fetched. So I think it's going to be a really harrowing, heartbreaking, but interesting look into that. And so I'm really looking forward to this series, and I can't wait to get to it one day. Finally, another book, my final book on my list is the incredible Shogun by James Clavell. Now, I'm cheating a little bit because I have seen the television adaptation of Shogun. It was incredible. I absolutely loved it. But this is one that I would love to read the book to as well. So this is historical fiction. Abby mentioned this the other day, saying that she loves historical fiction because it kind of tickles that nerdy scratch in her brain, and I can't agree more. Asia and Japan in general. I've explored parts of Asia, but Japan in general is where myself and my partner would love to visit one day. It's one of the top places on our list, and learning about its history is just so interesting, and honestly, I can't wait to read this. After Englishman John Blackthorne is lost at sea, he awakens in a place few Europeans know of and even fewer have seen, Nippon. Thrust into the closed society that's 17th century Japan, a land where the line between life and death is razor thin, Blackthorne must negotiate not only a foreign people with unknown customs and language, but also his own definitions of morality, truth and freedom. As internal political strife and a clash of cultures lead to seemingly inevitable conflict, Blackthorne's loyalty and strength of character are tested by both passion and loss, and he is torn between two worlds that will each be forever changed. As I say, I have seen the television adaptation and it was absolutely phenomenal. And I just know that I'm going to love the book because of it. I think the book will probably be even better. And again, it's just, I love learning about history, especially a part of history that I have never heard of before. I had a recent experience where I finished Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. It's Korean and Japanese history. It's a part of history that I've never heard about. And it was so recent. It's World War II and forward. But I'd never heard their side of it and the impact that it had. It's just never been told to me. I'm loving learning about parts of history that I've just never, ever heard spoken about before. 17th century Japan. I don't know anything about it, and I can't wait to learn more. And I know that it's such a powerful story. Oh, it just talks about so many things, and I can't wait. I can't wait. So those are my 10 books that I would like to read before I leave the earthly plane. Please let me know if you have read any of these 10 books, or let me know what other books should be on my list. What books are on your list? I would love to know. I think I've got a relatively well-balanced list. I've got some classics in there, a bit of sci-fi. I've got some non-fiction, some historical fiction. I think I've got a bit of balance. Got a Western in there, some translated fiction. I think we've got a good balance. Nothing particularly happy in there, but maybe I can work on that at some point. Maybe I can do a list of happy books that I need to read before I leave the earthly plane. But please do let me know your thoughts on all of these below. Join the discussion. And thank you so much, David and Thomas, for doing the video before me so that I could then tag myself and do this challenge. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And as I say, please let me know in the comments below what your books are, what books would make it to your list. And if any of them have sort of been there for a long time, or what stopped you from reading them yet? Is it because you are just so worried about not liking them, or is it because you're saving them because you'll love them? I do wonder why I've not gotten to them yet. But anyway, thank you so much for watching and taking some time out of your day to spend with me. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.